The emergency alarms echoed through the massive crystal halls of the Galactic Council building. Thousands of alien representatives from across the galaxy hurried to their seats, their faces showing worry and fear. Something terrible was happening, and everyone could feel it. Admiral Vextar walked slowly to the center of the Great Hall. His blue, scaly skin looked darker than usual, and his large yellow eyes were filled with sadness. It served the galaxy. For over 200 years, fighting in many wars, but he had never looked this defeated before. "Friends of the Council," he began, his deep voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "I bring you the worst news possible. The Zephyrian colony of New Bloom has stopped all communications. Our scout ships have confirmed what we feared most. The Void Swarm has found them." A wave of gasps and frightened whispers swept through. Assembly. The Void Swarm was the stuff of nightmares. They were creatures that ate entire worlds, leaving nothing behind but empty space. No one had ever successfully fought them and won. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as the most peaceful species alive. They looked like walking trees, with beautiful crystal flowers growing from their branches. Their cities were made of living plants that grew into magnificent towers reaching toward the sky. It never hurt anyone in their entire history. It spent their time growing beautiful gardens and creating art that could make other species cry with joy. "About our fleets?" asked General Mordock, a fierce warrior from the Altarian worlds. "Surely our combined forces can destroy these monsters." Admiral Vextar shook his head slowly. "Our ships are spread across the galaxy. We have 17 different wars happening right now. The Chronari rebels are attacking 3 systems. Pirates are raiding merchant ships in the outer zones. The Nebula Wars are taking most of our resources. We have no ships left to send." "But surely some ships can be pulled back," insisted Captain Zillanara from the Outer Rim Defense Force. "The Zephyrians are dying right now as we speak. Even if we could send ships, it would not matter," Vextar replied, his voice heavy with defeat. "We have tried fighting the swarm before. Every weapon we use, they learn to defend against within hours. Our laser cannons, plasma bombs, ion torpedoes, nothing works. They adapt too quickly. They are like a virus that becomes immune to medicine." The hall fell silent. For 3,000 years, the galaxy had enjoyed peace. Wars were small and contained. Most conflicts were solved with words instead of weapons. But now they faced something that could not be reasoned with, something that wanted only to consume and destroy. In the back of the hall, a very old alien slowly stood up. Elder the Ziska was ancient even by galactic standards. She had lived for over 800 years and had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations. Her skin was wrinkled and gray, and she moved with the careful steps of someone who had lived too long, but her eyes were still sharp and intelligent. "There is one option we have not considered," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But somehow everyone in the hall could hear her clearly. "What option?" Admiral Vextar asked, though something in his expression suggested he already knew what she was going to say. "The quarantine system," Desiska replied. "Sal3, the humans." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Hundreds of aliens began talking at once, their voices filled with shock and horror. Several delegates actually stood up and backed away from the Elder, as if she had suggested releasing a deadly plague. "You cannot be serious," General Mordock shouted above the noise. "Those creatures are barely above wild animals. They are too dangerous to be allowed contact with civilized society." "They destroyed our first contact ship," Captain Zillanara added. 300 diplomats died because they could not control their violent instincts. "They have been locked away for 3 centuries for good reason," another voice called out. "They are savages who solve every problem with violence." Elder Theesiska waited for the noise to die down before she spoke again. "Yes, they are violent. Yes, they are dangerous. But they are also survivors. They're what we call apex predators, the most dangerous hunters in their world. They have been fighting wars for their entire history. That is exactly why we cannot trust them," Admiral Vextar said firmly. "They would probably join the swarm if they thought it would benefit them." "Or," the Ziska replied quietly, "they might be the only species in the galaxy that can actually defeat the swarm. Sometimes, to kill a monster, you must find a bigger monster. The debate went on for hours. Some aliens were terrified at the thought of contacting humanity. Others were desperate enough to try anything. The Zephyrians were dying while they talked, and everyone knew it. Finally, the vote was called. It was close, closer than any council vote in centuries, but desperation won over fear. The message would be sent to the quarantined Sol system. They would ask the humans for help. As the council session ended, Elder Ziska remained in her seat, staring at the Great Seal of the Galactic Council. She wondered if they had just saved the galaxy or doomed it. Either way, there was no going back now. The response from the Sol system came back much faster than anyone expected. The council had sent their message using the old diplomatic channels, the same ones they had used 3 centuries ago during first contact. They thought it would take weeks to get an answer if they got one at all. Instead, the reply came back in just 18 hours. But it did not come through the diplomatic channels. It came through a military frequency that the humans were not supposed to know existed. Admiral Vextar stood in the Council Communication Center, staring at the message on the screen. His hands were shaking as he read it again and again. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They should not have access to our military networks." The message was short and written in perfect galactic standard language. Colonial Marine Division received your transmission. Commander Li Jiho, accepting contract. Our terms: complete operational control, no council oversight, payment in salvage rights and territorial concessions. Respond within 24 standard hours or find another solution. Captain Park Minho, the council's military liaison, read the message over the admiral's shoulder. They are treating this like a business deal, he said in shock. Our people are dying and they want to negotiate payment. They have been listening to our communications for centuries, Admiral Vextar realized. They know everything about us, our military codes, our diplomatic procedures, our weaknesses. We thought we were keeping them locked away, but they have been studying us the whole time. Elder Ziska arrived at the communication center within the hour. She moved slowly, but her ancient eyes were bright with interest. "What do they want?" she asked. "Everything," Admiral Vextar replied bitterly. "They want complete control over the operation. They want to keep whatever they find. They want us to give them territory. They are not offering to help. They are demanding payment for their services, and if we refuse, then they will let the Zephyrians die, and we will have no one else to turn to." The council met in emergency session once again. The debate was fierce and angry. Many aliens felt insulted by the human demands. Others pointed out that they had no other options. "They are treating us like we are weak," General Mordok growled. "They have no respect for our authority." "Maybe that is because our authority has not been able to stop the swarm," Elder Ziska replied calmly. "Maybe they are right to demand control. Our methods have failed." "But we know nothing about their methods," Captain Zillanara protested. "They could make everything worse." "Worse than complete extinction?" Ziska asked. "The Zephyrians will all be dead in days. We cannot save them. The humans might be able to." The vote was even closer this time, but desperation won again. Council agreed to the human terms. They sent their acceptance back to the Sol system, though many aliens felt like they were making a deal with devils. 3 days later, the human fleet arrived at the edge of the Zephyrian system. The Council had sent their fastest ship, the Harmonies, light, to observe the operation. Captain Park Minho stood on the bridge, watching the human ships appear from hyperspace. The human vessels were unlike anything in the galactic fleet. They were ugly, crude-looking things covered in thick armor plating. Where galactic ships were smooth and elegant, the human ships were all sharp angles and brutal efficiency. They bristled with weapon systems that looked primitive compared to the advanced energy weapons that the Council used. "They look like they were built for war," commented Lieutenant Yorseth, the ship's science officer. "They probably were," Captain Park replied grimly. The communication screen flickered to life, showing the face of Commander Li Jiho. She was a small human woman with dark hair pulled back tightly and eyes that seemed to look right through whoever she was talking to. Her uniform was plain and practical, without the decorations that most galactic officers wore. "Captain Park," she said, without any greeting, "I have reviewed your tactical data on the swarm. Your forces failed because you have been fighting a civilized war against an uncivilized enemy. We are going to change that." "Commander Lee," Captain Park began, trying to sound authoritative, "the Council expects regular reports on your tactical decisions. We have established protocols for military operations that must be followed." Commander Lee's expression did not change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Captain Park, your protocols are the reason you are losing this war. My Marines and I are going to solve your problem. When we are finished, you can return to your civilized games. Until then, stay out of our way." The communication ended abruptly, leaving Captain Park staring at a blank screen. Around him, the bridge crew looked worried and confused. "She just dismissed us," Lieutenant Yurseth said in disbelief. "She treated the entire Galactic Council like children." "Maybe she is right to do so," Captain Park said quietly. "Maybe we have been acting like children." On the human ships, Commander Lee Ji-ho was already preparing for battle. She had studied the swarm data, and she knew exactly what needed to be done. The galactic forces had failed because they were trying to fight a clean war against an enemy that did not understand the concept of mercy. The humans were about to teach the galaxy what real war looked like. The battle began just as the twin suns of the Zephyrian system started to rise. Down on the planet's surface, the beautiful crystal cities of New Bloom were now dark and empty. The void swarm had consumed most of the peaceful, tree-like inhabitants, leaving only scattered survivors hiding deep in the forest sanctuaries, in space above the planet. The swarm's bioships hung like giant diseased organs. They were massive living creatures that could change their skin to defend against any weapon. Their surfaces rippled with an oily sheen that had deflected every energy blast the Council forces had thrown at them. Commander Lee Ji-ho stood on the bridge of her flagship, studying the enemy vessels through her tactical display. Beside her, Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin worked at the weapons control station, her fingers dancing across the controls. "The swarm ships are huge," Kim reported. "Their armor has adapted to counter every energy weapon type in the galactic database. Plasma cannons, laser arrays, ion beams, they can defend against all of them." "Good," Lee replied, her voice calm and cold. "No. They adapted to fight the weapons they knew about, but they had never seen our weapons before." She opened a communication channel to all the human ships in the fleet. "All vessels. This is Hammer 1. We are beginning Operation Sledgehammer. I want full kinetic bombardment on my mark." On the Council observation ship, Harmony's Light, Captain Park Min-ho watched the human fleet through his sensors. The alien officers around him looked confused and worried. "What is kinetic bombardment?" asked Lieutenant Yurseth. "I have no idea," Park replied. "Their weapon systems do not match anything in our databases." Suddenly, the human ships opened fire. But instead of the bright energy beams that galactic forces used, the humans launched something completely different. They fired chunks of metal, simple iron and steel, but accelerated them to incredible speeds using magnetic coils. The projectiles moved so fast, they were almost invisible. They struck the swarm ships like invisible hammers, punching through the adaptive armor as if it were paper. The creature's defensive systems, perfectly designed to counter energy weapons, were useless against simple metal moving at massive velocity. The first salvo destroyed 3 swarm vessels completely. The dying creature's screams echoed across psychic frequencies, causing every alien on the observation ship to cover their ears in pain. "Impossible," Captain Park whispered, staring at his tactical display. "They are using primitive ballistic weapons against the most advanced defensive systems in the galaxy." "Sometimes the old ways work best," came a voice from the communication system. It was Sergeant Choi Hae-won speaking from one of the human marine assault ships. Her voice carried the satisfied tone of a soldier watching a plan succeed, but the humans were not finished. As the surviving swarm ships tried to adapt their defenses to the new threat, something even more terrifying began to happen. The human fleet started broadcasting across all frequencies, not tactical communications, but sounds that chilled the Council observers to their bones. They were broadcasting recordings of human warfare. battle songs with heavy drums and aggressive shouting, recordings of human soldiers screaming war cries as they charged into combat. Most disturbing of all, they played the sounds of humans laughing during battles, as if they enjoyed the violence. The Swarm, a hive mind that had conquered hundreds of worlds without ever feeling fear, began to retreat.
Ow.
For the first time in their existence, they'd encountered something that frightened them more than they frightened others. "They are using psychological warfare," Lieutenant Yerseth said in horror. "They're trying to terrify the enemy into submission." "It is working," Captain Park replied, watching as more swarm ships broke formation and tried to flee. The swarm is actually running away. The human ships pursued the fleeing swarm vessels with ruthless efficiency. They did not just destroy them, they hunted them down one by one, making sure none escaped. The humans moved like a pack of predators, coordinating their attacks with deadly precision. Commander Lee Jaho watched the battle from her command chair, her expression never changing. She had planned this engagement carefully, studying the swarm's weaknesses and exploiting them without mercy. This was not a civilized battle between honorable opponents. This was extermination. "Target the command ship," she ordered. "Use the relativistic kill vehicle." Single human ship launched what looked like a small missile. But as it accelerated, its speed increased far beyond anything the Council had ever seen. The projectile struck the largest swarm vessel at a significant fraction of light speed, causing an explosion that lit up the entire system. The remaining swarm ships, their command structure destroyed, began to die. Without their hive mind connection, they lost coordination and became easy targets for the human fleet. Down on the planet's surface, the surviving Zephyrians emerged from their hiding places to watch the battle in the sky. Elder Bloomsinger, the highest-ranking survivor, stood among the ruins of her crystal city and watched their saviors at work. "They fight like demons," she whispered to her companions. "They do not just defeat their enemies, they destroy them. Completely." "But they are saving us," replied another survivor. "Without them, we would all be dead." "Yes," Elder Bloomsinger said quietly. "But I wonder what price we will have to pay for this salvation." In space above, the last swarm ship died in a burst of flame and radiation. The battle was over, but something told the watching aliens that the real war was just beginning. The cleanup took exactly 12 hours. The human Marines swept through the ruins of New Bloom like a perfectly organized machine. They did not just kill the remaining swarm creatures, they captured some alive, studied them, and within hours had learned secrets that Council scientists had been trying to understand for decades. Captain Yu Song-ho led the ground forces, moving through the crystal ruins with his soldiers. The Marines carried weapons that looked simple but deadly, kinetic rifles that could punch through any armor, and strange devices that seemed to analyze everything they pointed at. The surviving Zephyrians watched their saviors with growing unease. The tree-like aliens had expected their rescuers to be happy and celebratory after the victory. Instead, the humans moved with cold efficiency, their weapons always ready, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. "They never stop watching," whispered Elder Bloomsinger to her fellow survivors. "Even when they are helping us, they are studying us, looking for weaknesses." "Perhaps that is why they won," replied another Zephyrian. "They think like predators, always hunting, always preparing for the next battle." The humans had set up a temporary base in the ruins of the main city. Their equipment was strange, not the elegant technology of the galactic standard, but brutal and effective machines that looked like they had been built for war. Everything they used seemed designed to kill or to help them kill better. Commander Lee Jaho stood in the center of the base, surrounded by screens showing data that made the Council observers nervous. She was no longer the mercenary commander, who had arrived 3 days ago. Now she looked like a conqueror studying her new territory. The operation was successful, she reported to the Council ship through the communication system. "The swarm has been completely eliminated from this system. All threats have been neutralized." Captain Park Minho, watching from the Harmony's light, felt his relief turn to worry. Something in the human commander's tone suggested that more was coming. "Excellent work, Commander," he said carefully. "The Council is grateful for your assistance. We can begin evacuation procedures for the survivors and start discussing your payment." "I am afraid there are complications," Lee replied, her voice carrying a new edge. "During our analysis of the swarm specimens, we discovered something very interesting about their technology." The main screen on the council ship flickered and changed. Instead of showing the planet's surface, it now displayed detailed technical diagrams. The alien officers gasped as they recognized what they were seeing: complete schematics of every major galactic species, military technology. "This is classified information," Captain Park said, his voice rising in alarm. "How did you obtain these files?" "The swarm's adaptive technology works by analyzing enemy weapons and developing countermeasures," Lee explained calmly. "But what your scientists never realized is that the swarm keeps records of everything they encounter. When we captured their specimens, we downloaded their entire database." The schematics continued to scroll across the screen. Ship designs, weapon specifications, shield frequencies, tactical procedures, everything the Council had kept secret for centuries was laid bare before them. "But this is not the interesting part," Lee continued. "The interesting part is what we found in our own databases. You see, while you have been keeping us quarantined for 3 centuries, we have been preparing for this moment." New images appeared on the screen: human technology, but not the crude weapons they had seen during the battle. These were sophisticated systems that rivaled anything the galactic powers possessed. "We have been monitoring your communications for decades," Lee said. "We know your military capabilities, your political structures, your economic systems. We have studied every species in the galaxy and developed countermeasures for all of them." Captain Park felt ice forming in his stomach. "You are talking about conquest." "I am talking about survival," Lee replied. "The swarm was just the beginning, Captain. Our analysis of galactic history shows 17 other extinction-level threats in the past millennium. The Devourers, the Crystal Plague, the Voidwalkers. Threats that your peaceful civilization barely survived, and only through luck." "The Council has maintained peace for 3,000 years, Park protested. "The Council has maintained the illusion of peace," Lee corrected. "Real threats do not care about your diplomatic solutions. The universe is a dangerous place, and it requires dangerous people to keep it safe." The screen changed again, showing human ships positioned throughout the galaxy. Not just the fleet that had come to save the Zephyrians, but dozens of other vessels that had been hidden and waiting. "Our terms are simple," Lee said. "The quarantine on humanity is lifted immediately. We receive full membership in the Galactic Council with voting rights on all military matters. We are granted territorial concessions in 17 key systems. And most importantly, we are given authority to deal with future threats as we see fit. And if we refuse," Captain Park asked, though he already knew the answer, "then you will discover why we survived 3 centuries of isolation while preparing for war," Lee replied. "We are not making threats, Captain. We are simply stating facts. You called us the most dangerous species in the galaxy. You were correct. The question now is whether we are your allies or your enemies." The communication ended, leaving the Council observers staring at blank screens. Around them, human ships began broadcasting detailed intelligence about every Council member's military weaknesses. The galaxy had been saved, but the price was becoming clear. The most dangerous species alive now held all the cards. 6 months had passed since the day the galaxy changed forever. The human quarantine was now just a memory, and the old peaceful ways of the Galactic Council seemed like stories from another time. The galaxy had a new reality, and everyone was still learning to live with it. Lieutenant Colonel Nam Tae-won stood on the observation deck of New Bloom Station, watching the scene below through the transparent walls. In the great biodomes, human and Zephyrian children played together, their laughter echoing through the rebuilt city. The reconstruction had been amazingly fast. Human engineering combined with Zephyrian plant-growing technology had created something beautiful and strong. "Do you ever feel bad about what we did?" asked Dr. Song Yoon-ha, the human scientist, who had helped create the friendship between humans and Zephyrians. She was studying the children below, taking notes on how the 2 species interacted. "About saving them." "Never," Nam replied, his eyes following a human girl who was teaching a young Zephyrian how to throw a ball. About how we did it? Sometimes I wonder. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one had expected. Space piracy had almost completely disappeared. Few criminals were willing to risk facing human response teams. The Chronari Rebellion, which had been going on for years, ended within weeks when human negotiators arrived with very clear alternatives to peace. 3 more colonies had been saved from destruction by threats that the Council forces could not handle. But the cost had been high. The old order of gentle diplomacy and careful negotiations was gone. Every species in the galaxy now knew that somewhere among the stars, apex predators were watching and waiting. The humans had not conquered anyone by force, but they had conquered everyone through the promise of force. The reports from the outer systems are interesting, Dr. Song said, reading from her datapad. Trade is up by 40%. Colony growth is at the highest rate in centuries. People feel safe to expand and explore again. Because they know we are watching, Nam replied. Fear can be a powerful motivator for peace. Human fleet patrolled the galaxy now, their ships appearing wherever there was trouble. They did not always fight often. Just the sight of a human vessel was enough to make problems disappear. Pirates surrendered without firing a shot. Rebel groups suddenly became interested in peaceful solutions. Territorial disputes were settled quickly through negotiation rather than warfare. Elder the Siska visited the station regularly, as she had done for the past few months. She was even older now, her ancient body showing the weight of centuries, but her mind was still sharp. She found Nam on the observation deck, as she often did during her visits. The council met yesterday, she said, settling into a chair beside him. There was discussion about the new trade agreements with the Rimward colonies. And Nam asked, though he already knew the answer. They asked for human security guarantees before they would sign, the Siska replied. Just like the 17 other agreements this month, Nam nodded. It was the new pattern. No one wanted to make important decisions without knowing that humans would protect them if things went wrong. The galaxy had become dependent on human strength, even as they feared it. Do you think we made the right choice? The old alien asked. That day in the council chambers, when we decided to contact your species, Nam watched as the human girl helped the young Zephyrian reach a flowering branch high above their heads. Both children were laughing with pure joy, not caring about the complex politics of their elders. Called us the most dangerous species alive, he said quietly. You were right. They're killers by nature. We have been fighting wars since we first learned to make tools. Dangerous does not always mean evil. And if we become a threat to you? The Ziska asked the question that everyone was thinking but few dared to speak. Nam turned to look at her, its expression serious but not unkind. Then you will discover why we survived 3 centuries of isolation while preparing for war. But I hope it never comes to that. The old alien studied his face for a long moment. Your people have kept every promise you made. The colonies are safe. Trade is thriving. The galaxy is more peaceful than it has been in generations, but Nam prompted. But we all know the peace exists only because you allow it to exist, the Ziska said. What happens when your people decide they want more than just security contracts and trade agreements? Nam smiled, but there was something predatory in the expression that reminded the old alien exactly what she was talking to. Then we will take what we want. But until that day comes, we will continue to be the galaxy's guardians. Human patrol ships moved through the system, their presence a constant reminder that the most dangerous species in the galaxy was now in charge of keeping everyone safe. Whether that was salvation or just a different kind of tyranny remained to be seen. The children below continued to play, unaware of the complex adult world above them. Perhaps they would grow up in a galaxy where humans and aliens worked together as equals. Or perhaps they would inherit a galaxy ruled by apex predators who had learned to disguise conquest as protection. Either way, the galaxy was safe. And for now, that was enough.